Welcome to another edition of the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. Stick with me today. This is going to be the most important retirement planning article you will have heard about. Trust me on this. I just read this article. I read the white paper that went with it, and I'm going to share it all with you. So this might be somewhat of a long-winded monologue from me to you, but stick with me. This is incredibly important. It's going to go against the grain of everything you have heard about retirement planning. And I'm just, oh man, what a wonderful piece of education this is. I'm just grateful I've come across it. As a professional financial planner, more than 20 plus years, you always learn a new stuff and you always want to take that new stuff to give to your clients. And this article right here, based on studies from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, CDC, Center for Disease Control, all kinds of different groups that do studies on retirement planning and whatnot, mobility and things of that nature. It's just a wonderful, wonderful resource I'm going to share with you today. So stick with me here. All right, so before I get started, I go to Google and I just look up trending topics that they have. And sometimes I see some articles that interest me. More often than not, I don't. But this one jumped out at me. And this is from Fox Business News, foxbusiness.com. Why are retirees living longer, healthier, and wealthier lives? And what this says is, according to United Income Report, which I'm going to show you here in just a second, current retirees are healthier, wealthier, and live longer lives than in previous generations. Now, I just did a podcast on this as well, but I did the podcast before I actually looked at the white paper that United Income Report did, because you click on this link and it's a broken link. All right. The report shows why the average life expectancy of 60 years old has increased 58% since 1900. 62% of retirees are now without physical or cognitive limitations, which is a 25% increase over the last 50 years. The first year the data was recorded was in 1963. The CEO of United Income, Matt Fellows, discussed with Fox Business, and whatever, we'll get in that in just a second. So I want to point out a couple things. New retirees are using their extra wealth by staying put in homes in the communities that they live in as workers rather than fleeing for the low-cost areas of the country. So put that in your head and park it for a second. We're going to come back to that. Surprisingly, they have not increased their income in retirement nearly as much. They have not increased their income in retirement nearly as much. Park that over there. Well, average wealth has increased. Now, average. All right. Well, average wealth has increased by over 100%. The average income of retirees has increased by 50%. Wealth has gone up. Income has gone up half as much. Now, averages is versus medians. I'm going to focus on that quite a bit because you got to understand the difference. There's significant differences. California boasts the largest numbers of retirees of any state, now accounting for more than 1 out of every 10 retirees. Florida, Texas, New York, and Pennsylvania round up the top 5. And those 5 states right there, my friends, account for more than 1/3 of all retirees. Look at that. New York and Pennsylvania, not warm weather climes, that's for sure. California, not notorious for being a low tax climb, that's for sure. So isn't that interesting? 5 completely diverse city or states that account for 1/3 of the retirement population. With increased, with increased health and wealth, what are seniors finding out about their cost of living priorities? This one right here, you need a tattoo on your brain. I've been saying this ever since I started this YouTube channel. The reason I started this YouTube channel was exactly because this right here. Look at all my stuff. Look at a guy named Ty Bernicki from his 2005 seminal paper on reality retirement. And just who else has done this? Wade Pfau. A bunch of different folks have done just massive amounts of research on the actual spending habits of retirees. I gotta get a drink of water. That completely put everything into perspective, what we've been told up to that point. The average retiree cuts their spending by about 2% every year through their retirement, my friends. The average retiree cuts their spending by about 2% each year in retirement. The biggest drop over spending is on lifestyle expenses like travel, apparel, entertainment, but essential spending on transportation and housing falls too. Right there. Housing falls too. As retirees pay off their mortgages. What have I been saying? The biggest retirement expense you have by far, nothing even comes close, is your housing. If you can pay off your mortgage, you just reduced your expenses, and that means you reduce the amount of income you need. Healthcare is one of the only expenses that tends to increase over time, even though it tends to increase just incrementally for mostly all retirees. All right, so that's this other stuff. It doesn't matter so much. I do want to go to this white paper. I'll link to this in my show notes. I'm absolutely this right here. The state of retirees from the United. And again, I'm not familiar with the United Income Group. That just sounds like an annuity seller of annuities, but I don't know that to be true or not. And I'm not familiar with Matt Fellows, but this piece of research is fantastic. So I want to show. So here, this are what they're using: the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, Census Bureau, IRS, University of Michigan, Centers for Disease Control, NOAA, and RAND. All right, and they're finding that the average life expectancy, we already talked about that, has increased by 58% since 1900, or by almost 9 years. In addition to living longer, 62% of retirees are living without physical or cognitive limitations, which is a huge increase over the last 50 years. Longer, healthier lives have increased physical activities among retirees. Now, listen, this is where it's going to get important. Stay with me. Stay with me. I'm telling you, you got to understand this. It gets important here. It's not all peaches and cream here, and there's a reason for that. Longer, healthier lives have increased physical activity among retirees, but the largest change in activity is a nearly doubling of the amount of time retirees watch TV. Now adding up to almost 3 hours a day for the average retiree. 3 hours a day in front of the stupid box. As health and wealth have increased, cost of living priorities have given away to quality of life considerations. In particular, retirees are increasingly staying put and living in more expensive suburbs, near urban areas instead of less expensive rural areas. Similarly, there's no relationship between the popularity of a state among retirees and a state's weather, tax burdens, crime, or density of educational institutions. So let me repeat that. There is no relationship between the popularity of a state among retirees or the state's weather, the tax burden, the crime rate, or the density of educational institutions. We've been told. Me too. I've told you this. You want to live where it's warm, tax rates are low, crime is low, and there's a lot of educational facilities around for healthcare and things of that nature. It's not factually correct. It could be, but it's not. I mean, it could be in the future, but it's not now. In fact, it's actually going the other way. Well, I'll show you here in a second. For financial security among retirees has broadly declined. For instance, the percentage of retirees living on minimum wage has dropped in half over the last 30 years, now accounting for 1 of every 8 retirees. Similarly, the share of retirees living below the poverty line has decreased by more than 10% during the same time period. So less and less people are living, hand to mouth. Among retirees, surging wealth has also not affected income inequality, which remains unchanged from 30 years ago. We do find that the surge in wealth has contributed to a 42% in wealth inequality among this older group of Americans, but that is solely due to the growing difference in investment wealth among retirees, rather than the differences in value of housing and or non-financial assets. So the investment wealth has gone up, inequality has gone up, but it has nothing to do with your home. It's got nothing to do with your financial assets, just what you have in your in your investment accounts, which can easily be decimated with a market decline for sure. All right, so collectively, retirees have never had it better. Let me put that on hold. Sorry, folks. Retirees have never had it better, with more health, wealth, and time to enjoy life without the constraints of work. Although that additional vigor and wealth has initially been consumed largely by more hours in front of TV. And I'm going to talk, there's a negative part of that big time. I'm going to share with you in a second. This group has tremendous civic potential that could be unlocked through creative market or public policy leadership. Now, here's what I thought was interesting. Including potentially volunteer incentives or a new tax incentive bond fund that aggregates the $14 trillion in financial assets held by U.S. retirees to address broad education, transportation, and public infrastructure needs facing the U.S. Now, Trump has proposed a public-private partnership to develop the infrastructure. Man, I tell you, I absolutely think that'd be wonderful. I'm not a big fan of the government getting involved in capital markets. I am not. but it wouldn't be the government financing projects. The government would be kind of creating this kind of a bond fund that would allow you to finance it, to see capital projects grow in your own neighborhood and potentially get a return on investment, however they choose to do it. I'm a pretty big fan of that. I think it's actually pretty unique that Trump is bringing that to the table. I hope it takes fruition, because at the end of the day, we need infrastructure built. We have a decaying infrastructure for sure. Our large power transformers, you've heard me talk about that, our LPTs are antiquated, and we just don't have the capacity to replace those anytime soon. And we need to update the infrastructure and the grid, and to get a public-private partnership in that, man, it'd make a lot of sense to me. All right, here's what I want to show you. This is the number of years added to life expectancy. All right, so these are the male have added about 8 years of life expectancy since 1900, and female about 10. And so the average life expectancy for someone who is 60 years old today without any physical or cognitive limitations has increased from 49% in 1953 to nearly 62% today. I should say that's the percentage of retirees without any physical or cognitive limitations has increased from 49% 50 years ago to nearly 62% today. Similarly, almost 3 out of every 4 retirees now report no difficulty walking at least 1/4 of a mile. That's pretty good. Perhaps the biggest improvement in the quality of life for retirees in recent decades, though, is the large and broad surge of wealth. Just the past 30 years, average wealth among retirees increased by almost 100%, now amounting to the average of 752. And this is what I want to show you. Watch this. This is the average, the blue. This is the median. I could care 2 craps about the average, because the average, Bill Gates and me, or Mark Zuckerberg and me, if we average us together, we're both multi-billionaires. But trust me, folks, I am not anywhere near a multi-billionaire, okay? So the average is skewed by those way outliers, way the Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates, the Warren Buffetts and whatnot. I do care about this, but even that's the median. That means 50% above, 50% above, and 50% below. So if we go back to 1989, we still have a pretty significant increase in $2016, my friends. Right there in $2016. It went up from about 120 to about 200. I mean, that's about a 50% roughly increase in overall net wealth. All right. Now that's on the median. So don't pay much attention to the average. Don't care. I do care about the median. And still the median over the last 30 years, roughly, 30 years has gone up pretty significantly. That's a pretty stunning thing, adjusted for inflation too, by the way. And that includes 2000, 2001, and 2, and then again 2007, 8, and going into 2009. And again, they looked at all these different groups they looked at to do their studies, BLS, CDC, and whatnot. All right, but this is what I want to talk about. We found that longer lives have indeed increased physical activity among retirees compared to previous generations, but the single largest increase is the amount of time allocated to watching TV. In fact, for every minute, I don't need to get in that, but we also found, and that's not, I want to just real quick, there's a thing that let me show you. To watching TV, there's another chart I want to show you on here real quick, and I'm going to come back because other things right here. Change since 1975, the number of minutes spent by retirees on different activities during a typical day. All right, so green is the average amount watching TV. Look at that. Look at that in minutes. I mean, look at that. It's gone. It's sickening, to be honest with you. Sleep has dropped significantly, and we're replacing sleep with watching TV. Not good. Physical activity is a little bit, that's the light blue there. So it's gone up a little bit, about 15 minutes more a day. Sleep and out-of-home leisure activities have gone up about 20 minutes each day. So we've lost sleep. We've increased that with watching TV, a little bit more physical activity, and a little bit more leisure activities. But you just look at that. That's not good. And so I want to show you something. Because I want to point that out about the TV. Bear with me just a second, because this is critically important. All right, but right here. In particular, yes, right here. In particular, between 1975 and 2012, the time watching the big set increased by over 1.5 hours, from an average of 3 hours to 4.5 hours a day. The average TV consumption is 4.5 hours a day. That adds up to about 30% of the average retiree's hours during a day they're awake. or 20% of the entire day. Now, again, looking at averages, you got to factor in there are some people who cannot move or are bound to wheelchairs, who have nothing else to do but watch TV. That will skew the averages higher. No getting around that. But still, that is, at the end of the day, we're watching a significant amount of TV in our retired years, more so than we've ever done before. And that's just not good. I'll share what I'm talking about. The trend is observed too. Industry data industry data that records information about television viewing habits of different consumer segments. For instance, the average age of all viewers in major sports, the average age of viewers of all major sports increased between 2006 and, that doesn't bother me. Golf, they talk about golf, tennis, right? Oh, right here. This is what I want to talk about. Research has found that viewership habits shape attitudes, for instance, about race, crime, and safety. All right. This is critically important. Stay with me. Research has found that viewership habits have changed or shaped attitudes, for instance, about race, crime, and safety. Since news programming is often sensationalized on these areas to capture the attention of viewers, it could lead to misperceptions that create unnecessary stress for retirees. Those outcomes are reflected in other research that found that increasing amounts of television viewership increased concerns about personal safety, as well as health and financial security. It also created a generally lower morale compared to people who do not watch as much TV. Oh my goodness. So you got the boob tube on and you got Facebook. All these things are geared, and then you got, clickbait media. They're geared not to say how good you got it. They're geared to make you fearful. I just can't stress it enough. Research has found that viewership habits shape attitudes, for instance, about race, crime, and safety. And I just sit there and I think, I'm a libertarian, a conservative libertarian. I'm not going to deny that. No reason to. I completely believe in the Second Amendment, completely believe you need to have your firearms. I do not believe that because I think someone's about to shoot me. It's just not likely. To counter that, the people who watch MSNBC, though, they're afraid they're going to get shot. They go to school, they're going to get killed. It's not true. It's not true. On the other hand, I also don't believe that your kids are going to be molested or they're going to be abducted. It's just is not there. I don't believe that the vast majority of kids who have allergies are going to get killed because of a peanut allergy. It's going to kill them, even though I do have kids with peanut allergies, and it worries me. But it's just not likely. It's not. And yet people go around and they see this stuff as being sensationalized all over the news, TV primarily, and then Facebook, and they say, they just get fearful. And folks, our society right now is so just, there's nothing to be afraid on that kind of stuff. Now, I do have my questions about vaccines. What are vaccines doing to increase allergies? I don't know. And yet there's no answers there. And everyone seems to say, you're anti-vaxxer. I just want to know. We're putting all this stuff in our body and we do not know if what they're doing is good. We don't. I'd be happy to share the CDC reports that say we haven't done that study yet, even though people presume they have, but they have not. But I don't sit there and say, oh my goodness, if you're going to vaccine your kid, you're going to fall off a bridge and die tomorrow. Just no evidence of this stuff. Now, lack of evidence doesn't mean there's no evidence at all. It just means we don't know for sure. But my thing is, you watch all this stuff, and it depends on your political persuasion. I hate to say it, the people on the left are afraid like crazy of guns. People are right, they're afraid like crazy of terrorists. And just there isn't the evidence that we should be fearful of all this stuff. Now, what can guns do? Can guns shoot people up? Yes, they can do mass casualty for sure. A terrorist absolutely can do mass casualties 10 times, a million times worse than a gun. Because if he gets his hands on a dirty bomb, the fears that we did not have before would come to fruition. But guess what? There's nothing you can do about it anyway. All right. And so if you're living in fear that there's a member of the NRA under your bed who's going to shoot you, or you're living in fear that there's a member of Al Qaeda under your bed who's going to blow you up, you can't. Stop. And the problem is that we're watching TV too much, which is all sensationalized based on your political opinion. It's sad. Now, where I disagree with it, right here. The outcomes reflected in other research that found increased amounts of television viewership increased concerns about personal safety as well as health and financial security. It also created a generally lower morale compared to people who did not watch as much television. Similarly, research has found the effects of television vary by the programming people are tuning into. I don't buy this for 2 seconds, but for example, one multi-country study found that the public PBS increased political knowledge while cable news reduced that knowledge. I don't buy that for 2 seconds flat. It depends on what you're considering political knowledge, because PBS is left. There's no other way around that. Very, very biased. And so if your political knowledge is what you're grading people on is on the left side, then yeah, if you watch PBS, it'd be more politically knowledgeable than people on the right who don't watch PBS, because your political knowledge is determined by how much on the left you agree. I don't believe that for 2 seconds. I think all TV, it creates chaos and it creates problems in your head. And this is here too. Other research has found that increased hours in front of this TV set can create a number of health problems. For instance, an analysis of 8 academic studies found that significant time in front of the TV was associated with increased risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. The largest study of 24 academic studies found that increased sedentary activity among older households was associated with increased risk of all-cause mortality. Other research found that increase in activity was associated with harmful health outcomes, regardless of the amount of time spent on physical activity during the day. I wonder which came first, the chicken or the egg. Did you watch more TV because you were ill and then you said, I can't do anything, I watch more TV? Or are you ill because you watch more TV? And I challenge that to some degree. I don't know. I haven't done the analysis, I haven't done the studies, but I know how correlation and causation can a lot of times be misconstrued. You watch a lot of TV and you're ill, thus TV causes you being ill. I'm not so sure. Now, we next considered how these trends vary by income level among retirees. For this analysis, we considered the share of retirees having income higher than 75% of other retirees, i.e. in the high income, and less than 75% of low income. Now watch this. Number of minutes spent by retirees on activity during a typical day. Low income watches 300 minutes a day on TV, which is a 43% increase since 1975. High income watches 224 minutes a day on TV, which is a 78% increase since 1975. Sleep, there's less sleep across the board. And then now watch this though. Physical activities, low income only increased it by 12%. High income increased it by 77%. So 77% of high income people are doing more physical, they've increased the amount of minutes. High income people have increased the number of minutes they do physical activities by 77%, but they've also increased the amount of time they're watching TV by 78%. Low income is 43%, the amount of TV they watch, and the amount of physical activities hasn't changed much. That would tell you something, that where's all that time going that we've accumulated? Well, it's not going to sleep because we're reducing our sleep. So it just seems to be the higher income people are getting more physical activity, but they're watching more TV significantly. But relative to their low income peer, they're not watching anywhere near. They're watching that's about 30% less, 25% less TV, and they're basically doubling the amount of physical activity, which kind of goes back. High income generally leads to better quality of life. You're usually in better shape for sure. And we talk about that. Okay. In summary, the growing wealth and health of retirees has led to an increase in physically oriented activities, including exercise. But again, the largest number of hours spent in front of a television. Okay, but I want to show you something else here. This right here. All right. So stay with me. Maybe I'll pause it right here and I'll start with part 2. Let's see, how long have I been on this guy? And let me pause it real quick. All right, folks, I'm actually going to pause this because I do have a lot more I want to go about this study, because the next part of the study is critical about what you have been told to believe about health, wealth, moving, where you're going to live, who you're going to live near, crime, weather, and all these things too. I'm just telling you right now, it's incredibly interesting. I'm going to share that with you on this next episode. So stay tuned for part 2. I'll put it in the show notes, and there'll be a link right there that goes through. Subscribe. Thumbs up, always helpful. And I'd love to hear your comments. Have you, or maybe your folks are retired? What are they thinking about doing? Are they going to stay in the state they live in? So put some comments in there and stay tuned for the second part of this series. Thanks, guys.